Hi, and welcome to a new episode of Newsmakers TV, Santa Barbara's most popular and provocative local news analysis show, on the air since 2014. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, September 2023, Rosh Hashanah, as the Jewish New Year begins at sundown tonight. The start of the Days of Atonement, a 10-day period of reflection and renewal. Our best to those observing the high holy days. And on every Friday, we're reflecting on local public affairs with Santa Barbara's top journalists. I'm very pleased to welcome back to the show Nick Welsh, executive editor of the Santa Barbara News Press. Santa Barbara News Press, that's fun. Santa Barbara Independent, and the Angry Poodle, his own self, and Josh Molina, my colleague, friend, and fellow podcaster, whose work you can read at Newshawk and here at SantaBarbaraTalks.com. Thanks, fellas, for being here. So, Nick, it appears we have another case of renoviction, where these VC investment banker scumbag types buy an apartment building, evict the tenants, spruce it up, then gouge students for the rents coming back. But this time, our friend, City Council member Mike Jordan, jumped into the breach. What's the deal?
Well, on Lower Bass Street, on the 215 Bass Street, which is between the freeway and the waterfront, there's a 52-unit apartment complex that you could walk past and not even notice you were walking past. And for years it has been, not cheap housing, but for people who are working, it's been what you would call workforce housing. And some of the people who live there are Section 8, and some of the people who live there are making six figures. But it's been owned by the same outfit for a long time, and they decided time to cash out had come. They put it on the market for $19 million. They got 16.8 for it from a group of investors called the Kodo Group, which Kodo Group, their whole strategy is to invest in properties in college towns. So UCSB, San Luis Obispo, UC Riverside, I think they have stuff, University of Arizona and Phoenix. So they go into markets where, and they find properties.
This is a different group than ran the same playbook out in IV, correct?
It's a different playbook. It's a different group, same playbook. And it's sort of a mix between what Ed St. George does and a guy named Neil DePaola. And a long time ago, I remember talking with Ed St. George, who is a big landlord out in Isla Vista and everywhere else now. And he talks about educational tourism and what a great economic motor it was. And he's right. And so what they're going to do, I mean, I went inside, and they're very, very cozy. Property was built, I think, in 1930, back before people were fortifying milk with vitamin D, and the growth spurt of Americans had taken off, and you did not need a huge place. I talked to one woman who lived there, and she said, it's really nice, it's really expensive, and it's really small. And the idea that the landlords have expressed that they will put two people in a one-bedroom, she thought was trying to put a size 12 foot in a size 8 shoe.
This woman got an eviction notice?
She hasn't gotten it yet, but she's expecting it. And she said, I don't know if I could live it. It's so small, I don't think I could live there with my boyfriend. It may be, that level of intimacy is just not enough. So she pays $2,200 according to the ads that the landlord has posted. You get two people each paying $1,500 in a one bedroom, and so you'll be getting $3,000. So that's what it is. And you can see the obvious economic interest in it, with UCSB, going crazy in terms of its enrollments and not building any housing. City College, its enrollments are more up and down than UCSB's, but they don't provide housing either.
Yeah.
And, the consequences we're feeling.
Yeah. So Josh, have you ever seen council member Mike Jordan move any faster on land or in the water than he did in reacting to this?
Well, I don't know. All I know is what I read in Nick's story. So, Jordan he loves the city. He loves Santa Barbara. He loves being a council member. So obviously, and he's got kids who have to deal with the housing situation. So I could see something like this motivating him and him wanting to jump on it, and not to be sort of jaded, but everyone's going to be working a little bit harder leading up to the election year next year.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's kind of very similar to what Laura Capps, Supervisor Capps, did in the IV case.
No, I think you're right. And when I interviewed Michael Jordan, he alluded to that. He said, she was on it. I mean, she was so fast out of the box. And I think it was very clear, you want to have your elected officials showing up, knocking on doors, rattling cages. It's not clear exactly what the city can do. I mean, it looks pretty clear right now that the notice that have been given to the tenants so far, and it's in dribs and drabs. So it's
does the just eviction ordinance apply here?
The city says they think it does. When I talked with the city attorney, she said, I haven't spoken to the tenants. I haven't seen the lease yet, but if you've been a tenant in good standing for over a year, it should apply. And so what that means is that when you should get 2 months notice, not 1 month, which is what they gave, you should be told in the lease, oh, by the way, you get 2 months of relocation assistance. So we're going to pay 2 months rent for you to move somewhere else.
And none of that was in the eviction.
None of that was in there. And likewise, nothing was in there saying, here's the 4 reasons that are excusable for evicting somebody without their fault. A, you're going out of business. B, one of your relatives is going to move in. Well, 52 units, one of your relatives isn't moving into 52 units. So a lot of that was not in there. You get the sense talking with the landlord, not being the right word, email communication, that they are drawing a distinction between termination and non-renewal. And they like the verb non-renewal. And the city attorney, Sarah Connect, has indicated she thinks that is a distinction without meaning.
Yeah. And of course, Josh, some people thought Mike Jordan acted with a little too much alacrity. Nick, I don't want you to think I'm hacking you, but this email's all over town from former city attorney Ariel Kalan, who calls this a councilmanic interference that is inappropriate for elected officials. While the cause and motive may be worthy and pure, elected officials have no business directing or attempting to direct the actions of the city prosecutor, except in the most general sense. This is Hornbook law, straight out of the ethical rules of prosecutors. And he goes on to compare Jordan to Donald Trump with Bill Barr. What do you think? Has he got a point?
Well, yeah, I do think he has a point, only in this context of inconsistency, because sometimes you will hear the council members say things like, we can't really do anything because we need to trust and rely on our professional staff. And they do that when they feel that benefits them. Maybe they don't want to do something that different because it might offend somebody. So they put the onus on the staff. But in these other cases, if they see political opportunity, then they have no problem sort of going over the heads of the professionals. So I kind of see it both ways. And I would imagine that if you are a city attorney, the last thing you want is an insurance agent telling you how you should legally handle a potential just cause eviction, notice. And so, but they are elected. They have that right, obviously. So, it is sort of in the
What
middle,
do you
but I
think?
totally
But
could see
Nick,
that
do
side.
you think Jordan's out over its skis on this, or you think?
I don't. I understand where Ariel's coming from, but I think in this case, what Jordan was trying to do was he wanted to be able to respond. He wanted to know what the facts were. He wanted to know what the law was and what legal avenues and protections existed for the tenants. So when he went knocking on doors, he wanted to know what he could tell them. And I think there's a difference between trying to find out what you can tell tenants than sort of unilaterally as a sort of a one-person brigade directing city enforcement actions.
Yeah, that's a good.
I think what Michael was trying to do was what can we do and what does the law say? And
well, kudos to him for acting fast. Josh, you talking about the city council and political opportunity, and of course, no one comes to mind faster than Megan Harmon in that context. She was in your story this week about the budget, trying to reduce the amount of budget reserves that the city has, sort of like a bucket with a hole in it. As long as you keep filling it from the top, everything's fine. Mistress of spending other people's money. Now that I've given you that unbiased and neutral introduction, what was going on?
I remember the days, Jerry, when Megan Harmon was #1 on your list of politicos in town. The Harvard graduate, the rising star. How quickly.
Maybe if she'd run against Dosh, she could get back out there again. But anyway, let's talk about the budget.
She, during the budget season, when they were dealing with a budget shortfall this year, as well as the next few years, she had suggested, let's lower our emergency reserves from 25% to 20%. And the idea is, rather than it sit somewhere, let's put it in the hands of public services. The city, of course, cutting parks and recreation programs, and also let's use it for workers, raises, general fund money. And there was some talk at the time of, we don't want to do this now. This is right in the middle of the budget. We've got to vote. Let's put it off until later and have an open discussion about it. So that's what happened on Tuesday. And there was a little bit of a gang up on her. Most of the council said, this is a poor idea. We don't want to risk our emergency funds. And Councilmember Sneddon was the strongest. She said that we deal with fires, debris flows, climate change, sea level rise, and the potential for an earthquake. And if two of these events happen at the same time, we're going to need all of our emergency funds. So she hit that drum really hard.
Megan, to her credit, had done her homework and said, listen, we already just went through all these things and we only drew it down, 8% or something, right?
Yeah. Sneddon was sounding really like a strong fiscal conservative, and she is, right? That's Sneddon's thing, is she's kind of sometimes over here and sometimes she's over here, and sometimes she goes back and forth, within the same meeting. And Harmon is very clearly, let's give the money to the employees, to the union workers. And so politically,
wait, let me just jump in here. I mean, it isn't just SEIU. I mean, if you listen to the cops, you go, we can't enforce traffic safety because we don't have enough. We have one parking enforcement officer.
That's a recruitment issue. That's different. That's a different issue.
Jerry, what do you think drives recruitment? Money.
Well, I don't know, the politics of the town and the cost of the house.
The politics of Santa Barbara is not any more anti-cop than just about any other city you're going to find around here. I don't think people aren't coming to Santa Barbara because the populace is anti-police. I think it's the cost of living is so ridiculous you can't afford it.
But Santa Barbara is not alone in having this problem with recruiting cops either.
Yes, exactly.
But the thing is, Oscar Gutierrez agreed with Harmon. Everyone else didn't. Alejandro Gutierrez was not there. But here's the thing. Harmon loses Tuesday, but what she did is really going to help her politically down the road, because what she did was she put herself out there knowing she was going to lose. And so now she's on the record saying money belongs in the hands of people who work in the city, who should be able to have more income to actually live in the city. And yes, she's talking about SIU, she's talking about public safety, she's talking about everybody. And all those people, well, I'm not all, right, but many of those people are behind her. They're glad she did that. And
Oh
they're
yeah,
upset with the council
she wins
for
by
not.
losing in this case. But on the merits, what do you think, Nick? I mean, the reserve's too big. I mean, we have too much money saved.
You know, I have to say, I did not watch this. I did not read the staff report. I have been tuned out for a number of weeks.
This
I-
has never stopped you from having an opinion before.
But I don't know jack about the specific. I know people have, as the city, have been fighting about reserves for as long as I've been covering the city. We have a very healthy reserve policy. And, you know, if you are a union representing the workers, you're going to say, we are true belts and suspenders when it comes to covering our flanks. We're more than amply protected. And if you're the city, you never can be true protected.
Let me just say one thing though, just to wrap this up. And I don't want to sound like I'm defending Megan Harmon. I'm just trying to offer a little bit of more of where she was coming from. But here's what happens during the budget season. People who know how to organize, who have power, who want to rally a whole bunch of people, the representatives from the library, they'll go and they'll say, don't cut this, don't cut this, don't cut this. And then what will the council do? They'll find the money, all right? And often they'll dip into their reserves to do it. So we do have an inequity, right? Because right now, the only time the council buckles is for political pressure during the budget season. And then they have no problem incrementally dipping into the reserves to find that money. What Harmon is saying is, why don't we just take that money, a small percentage? Her goal was 20%, but she said, we probably could just take it down to 22%. And let's just have that money so we don't have to do that battle, because the little guy may not have the political power to go up there and get 4 of them to vote for their cause. But if the money's there, then it's handled more systematically. So that's the other issue. The other thing, Eric Friedman, which, I guess is a good point. He said, we need as much money in our reserves as we can because we're going to have to sell municipal bonds to fund the police station. And it could affect our interest rate if we look like we don't have a big, savings account, simplifying it. So that was an interesting financial point. Of course, that's Eric. That's him. He's always in the weeds there. But that was interesting.
That's a good point. And, I got to say, it's a very slippery slope, not to mix metaphors, but it's like crack cocaine for people who are spending other people's money. Oh, well, we did it before. Now we've done it. Let's do it again. To do this to fund current expenses seems to me to not be fiscally prudent. But what do I know? I'm only paying taxes to pay for their salaries. All right, Nick, at the supervisors, I guess it was what public health came back with this request for more money for the contractor that's working in the jails on mental health. I was astonished, and I hope I read this right. $71 million to this contractor in the last 6 years. And
Yeah.
how many deaths have we had in the jail?
I don't know how many deaths we've had in the last 6-7 years, but I know
8 in the
we had
last.
8 or 9 in the last jail. It's the sheriff's office. It's not the
Sheriff's
public
office.
health.
All right.
The sheriff runs the jail, and the sheriff contracts out with this company called WellPath. And WellPath is a very large company, and it specializes in providing help, regular health care, mental health care to people in county jails and incarceration. And their record, is checkered. And, on the table this Tuesday was an administrative item, which means you don't even talk about it unless somebody raises a stink. And you say, let's give them $14.5 million, which is a significant, about an $900,000 increase from the year before, because we need to extend the contract. and mental health advocates showed up. Sam Rosen, formerly with the grand jury, showed up and said, you know what, the track record of this company and of the contract itself in dealing with mentally ill people in the county jail is really problematic, is the kindest way you put it. Under the contract, you don't have to have mental health professionals on staff 24/7. You only have to, so there's nobody there at the jail who's a mental health professional from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And Stan Rosen, former district attorney and on the grand jury says, this idea that mental health problems stop at 11 o'clock at night and wait until 7 in the morning is fiction. And people die at that time because there's a problem. If you work for WellPath and say that Jerry Roberts or Josh Molina has a suicidal impulse, you can't tell it to the correctional staff.
Because
They
HIPAA?
have HIPAA confidentiality protections. And so you don't have people there, and then the people who are there can't talk to the other people who are there. And so people fall through the cracks, and you have way too many people in there in the first place who are mentally ill. And so I think what a lot of the reflux that the supervisors were expressing is really, as the bottom line is, we have too many mentally ill people in the jail who should be somewhere else. And having the jail try to be the mental health care provider is inherently unsatisfactory. I mean, that's sort of the bottom line. But in the meantime, this company, the contract needs to be renegotiated so at least you have somebody on staff.
How long is the contract for?
Well, it has about half a year left, and then they have to start renegotiating. Now,
I mean, this was a really searing grand jury report.
It was a really serious grand jury report. And one of the things that came out loud and clear at Tuesday, right now, the sheriff is in charge of all this, right? This is the sheriff's jail, it's his contract. Where the supervisors were unanimous, even the conservative law and order ones, we need to have public health directly involved in an oversight role here.
That was
how this care is dispensed.
So is that going to happen?
We did not see any blowback from the sheriff's department on it.
Was Bill there?
So I think it's going to happen. But
yeah, it sounds like it really needs to happen. Joan Hartman seemed like she was the most exorcised about it.
She was the first one out of the gates, and I think that her office has a long history there, and that is absolutely the case. But Bob Nelson from Orchid, conservative Republican, he also was. So I think it was really unanimous. Yeah. But Joan was definitely the first one out of the box.
Okay, bad problem. All right, Nick, or no, Josh. I thought you had the lead of the week on this housing project on West Korea, where you say Sheila Lodge is for a taller building. That was a first. What's that about?
Yeah, I broke a lot of my own rules for how to write a lead there, but it seemed to work. So, former Mayor Sheila Lodge, who's
as long as you know you're breaking them, Josh.
Yes,
you know you're breaking.
I'm always aware of that. Former Mayor Sheila Lodge has always been a preservationist, community preservationist, right? And she's an icon of this and very respected, well-known. And she has fought with Brian Cornell, one of the most prominent architects in Santa Barbara for decades over building height. And here we had this project at 321 West Carrillo Street, where Cornell is coming forward as an architect working with the developer. And Sheila Lodge just sort of says, I can't believe I'm saying this, but we should maybe make the building taller to break up some of the flatness of the eyescape there, the viewscape there, because there's a tower that's an element. And so she thought it should stand out and be taller. She said, we need the housing. it's in the great spot for housing. It's near transit. This is where you should have a
Where is it
building.
exactly?
So it's 321 West Korea Street. So it is near a gas station by Castillo, and it's very close to where the city is building middle income housing along with the housing authority on Castillo and Korea. Yeah, so it's right there. And so Sheila just kind of said that and chuckled, and Cornell went up there and you know, he said, "Thank you. We'll try to make this puny small little tower bigger for you." But you know, this is a cool project in the sense that it's housing. It's going to be a mix of sizes, uses, some affordability in it. And right now there's a historic Bates house in the back that they're going to move to the front, and they're going to put the apartment project set back. And so everybody was sort of on the same page with this. But to see Sheila Lodge, who's, you know, 92, 93 years old and just as sharp as anyone in Santa Barbara is on all of these issues, it's fantastic that she's still driving so much of the conversation here around housing and building.
So,
You know, I think you're right. I mean, Sheila gets pigeonholed a lot as just say no preservationist, and she's a lot more interesting than that, and a lot more inventive. I mean, she was involved like when they came up with the AUG density program, however many years ago. She was very much on board with that, and so she bristles at this idea that I'm only a preservationist and I don't care about housing, and she can cite chapter and verse and will do so at length if you tag her that way. But she really has made such a contribution to the conversation and debate to this town.
yeah. And so what would the height be, Josh? Is it, it's above 48?
Yeah, so it's a 4-story project, and I think the highest would be just under 48 feet, 47 something, with most of it around 45 feet. And it's 37 units, and it's downtown. And I think there's some issue. There's no parking proposed as part of this project, so it goes into these other issues. There were some concerns about where people might park, but what can you do?
But under the state mandate, right? It's close to public transit, so it doesn't have to be any parking, correct?
Exactly. I mean, that is one of the places in the city that is right perfect. There's a big parking, bus stop right nearby. So yeah, and the city doesn't really know until they build some of these projects. Are people not going to have cars? Are they going to park them far away? We're going to, there's lots of stuff going on here.
No parking and much more gridlock. So yeah, take it to
Very.
Nick. I've been for 1974. I've been following this stuff about and this will make people get out of their cars.
I'm totally aware.
Nothing is going to make anybody get out of their car.
I understand the power of magical thinking, and I understand that there is wishful thinking and magical thinking going on here. But the reality is that the electric bike is a game changer, and the electric bike can change. A lot of people do not need cars if they have electric bikes. The car is still, for hauling a lot of things. If you have family, it's hard to do without a car. I'm not.
What is the average age of the resident of Santa Barbara? Would you guess?
Oh, I would guess 38.5 years.
Oh, I'd guess more like 85.6. And they're not getting on any electric bike. All right, let's talk about something happier than this, which is our good friend John Zant, who is he's a sports editor.
Oh my God, he is the best.
He is the best, and he's getting inducted into the Athletic Hall of Fame. Josh, you had him on the podcast this week. Talk a little bit about John Zant.
Yeah, so John Zant is a iconic, legendary journalist in town, sports writer. He worked at the News Press for, 3 decades, 4 decades, and then he worked 15 years at the Independent. And he was one of the journalists who was fired during a protest, after the whole meltdown. But his career is not defined by that. His career is, he's interviewed everybody who's ever done anything of any significant sports contribution, in this community, you know, from Eddie Matthews to Karch Karai to all the local legends that have come through Santa Barbara. And he's covered the Olympics, but he's also covered Friday night football with, you know, high school students. And he's known every coach. And, you know, he talks about Mark French and, you know, women's soccer and the growth of soccer at UCSB. And he was the narrator of all of that for the news press for so many years. And
Mark
he,
Patton.
yeah, well, of course, Mark Patton as well. You know, and they kind of were interchangeable in the sense of Zant was the editor, and then Patton was the editor, and Zant became a columnist. And, you know, it's so fun to be a sports columnist because you're just capturing the heart and the motion of those things that resonate within all of us through the eyes of sports and athletics and competition. And then he went on to the Independent, continued to write. He told a really good story how he wrote a story about Vin Scully and how Vin Scully calls Dodger games. And so he like captured a little bit of his narrative with the hits and explained the storytelling and wrote this column. It was like Vin's 50th year or something. And Vin Scully, somebody sent it to him. I think he wrote this for the Independent. Somebody sent this to Vin Scully, and Vin Scully read it and sent him a letter, a handwritten letter, saying, thank you so much for your appreciation of my work and thank you for what you do. And this was like a highlight of John Sammy.
Well, that's
not
great.
me.
And John was also, I mean, he was a pretty good player in high school, right? I mean, he was a
football, track and field.
Track and field. He was fast. No, I mean, what John Zant shows is sort of like how important a sports section is, particularly in a daily paper context, in establishing a real bond between a paper and the community. And John Zant, when he would interview somebody, he would know their father, their mother, their grandparents, their great-grandparents. I mean, he would go back to the days of Noah's Ark, practically, in terms of the family. And he knew the history. And really, I've been trying to get John interested in writing a sports history of Santa Barbara, just as sort of an encyclopedic photographic tome, because he could do it justice and everyone would read it, and you would really get a sense of the community and how it's evolved by reading about sports.
Yeah, and you know, that was one of the first things that really became clear to me about community newspaper, local newspaper, when I came here in 2002 was, you know, the prep sports is just something that ties everybody together. I mean, and there's nothing, you know, greater than having your kid's name in the paper. And that was such a huge thing. And it you know, it was a realization I made. And John's knowledge of that is so granular. The thing I remember too was he came to me and said, you know, I've covered every Olympics since, you know, the Parthenon or whatever. Can I go to the Olympics? And yeah, sure, let's go to the Olympics, you know. And because he knew, you know, like, well, this guy, he's on the alternative team for the you know, javelin throw, whatever. Well, he knew every local person there was, and he was able to both present sort of the bigger picture of the Olympics that was going on, as well as the local athletes. And we did this house ad. We put him in a toga with a little, I don't know what what's that called? Not grape leaves, whatever that is. Garland on his head, you know, and he was holding I think a volleyball in one hand and a basketball in the other. We ran a full page. It was a great ad. It ran every day until the owner of the paper objected and wanted to know why John Zant was at the Olympics. And well, the rest is history. All right, we'll leave it there. Want to remind everybody, Newsmakers is showing Citizen Macaw at the Marjorie Luke Theater on Wednesday, September 27th at 7 p.m. Find out how and why the paper, our historic daily paper, is in bankruptcy. And you can RSVP on our website, newsmakerswithjr.com. Nick Welsh, thanks so much. Great to see you back with us, brother. And
good to be back.
And Josh, as always, thank you very much. And we will see all of you next time on Newsmakers.
Thank you.